All right, welcome. So what I'm going to talk about today is, you might have seen in the Joomla headlines, there's been some changes going on in release cycles, and numbers are changing, and numbers are not sequential, and what's going on, we can't count, and that sort of thing. Well, I'm going to have a bit of a look at the history behind it and what's happening now. And also just some information on Joomla as a platform. It's actually a bit, this is probably a segue into my talk this morning, but we're around the wrong way. That's okay. And if we've got time, I'll do a quick on-the-fly, not practiced, J upgrade of 1.5 to 1.7. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so back in the bad old days of Mambo, where Joomla comes from, I did some research to see how often were we releasing, because I couldn't remember. I actually found out that we were releasing every sort of 5 to 8 months. We had a 10-month break there, but on average we were releasing fairly quickly. And this is really cool, and that happened right up until Joomla 1.0. And something strange happened, and it took us 28 months to get Joomla 1.5 out, and 36 months to get Joomla 1.6 out, and sort of the logical extension to that was we'd still be developing 1.7 now. And something had to give, because this obviously wasn't an acceptable situation. The long release cycles are great for people who love stability, don't like change. They set up the servers and they say, nobody move! I don't want a new version of anything. But it's pretty lousy for innovation. There's no new features coming in. There's, you're just fixing bugs and the same old. So the needs of the innovators and the needs of the stabilifiers, stabilizers, or whatever we're going to call them, are always at odds. So what were we going to do about that? Needed, that's shooting automatically. So we needed to sort of balance the situation, and we want to maximise stability, and we want lots of innovation, and we want everybody involved, and high quality, and everybody needs to be satisfied with the product, and it needs a long shelf life so that people selling books don't have to write a new one every sort of 3 months. Oh, I didn't say that. But we want to minimise the time that these things get to market. We don't want too much change. We don't want any bureaucracy. We don't want low risk, and we don't want anyone frustrated, and we don't want to stagnate. And that's a pretty tall order. So what we did was this. We came up with this. Well, we didn't come up with it. We looked at what a lot of other people were doing, and particularly borrowed from the Ubuntu scheme. And they were releasing every 6 months. They were doing time-based releases as opposed to our feature-based releases, which translate into when it's ready, it will be released. We don't know when. So Ubuntu was releasing every 6 months, and this looks pretty cool. So what we decided to do was look at a release cycle, 6 months long. Basically, as a version is released, there's 4 months, roughly 4 months of concentrated maintenance. We fix the bugs. Unlike Drupal, we don't issue perfect releases, so we do need to fix some bugs.
Not perfect. Far from it, Ben.
That was just fine. No, so we spend 4 months stabilising the thing, and then there's roughly a period of 1 month where people we assume have been working on features in the community, and the bug squad starts to look at merging those in, testing them, and seeing if they're all right. And then the last month of the release cycle is putting out sort of alphas and betas and going through that stage of the thing. We also came up with this notion of, okay, we're going to bring things out every 6 months. That's going to be okay for some people, but there are some organisations which just can't handle that pace of change. they don't want to be changing their upgrading, doing major upgrades of versions. So we came to this idea of having, well, we'd have a short-term release of support and we'd have a long-term release. And the short-term release was a particular version would last for 6 months plus a bit, basically the life between the next version. But then we'd have every third cycle we'd have a release which would be supported for security every over 18 months, so that there was a version that companies could settle on and say, okay, we've got 18 months to plan. What happens when we absolutely have to upgrade to the next version? And so there's this idea of short-term and long-term release cycles. So how that's panned out, if we imagine that 1.5 was actually released on July 2010, it wasn't, but we just got to use our imagination. And 6 months after that, Joomla 1.6, and 1.5 was what we call a long-term release cycle. It's or long-term support, where we fix security issues after the new version comes out. There's no new features coming in. But 1.5 was released in July, then 1.6 was released in January this year, 1.7 was released in July of this year, and 2.5, I'll talk about the 0.5, will be released in January next year. Okay, so 1.5, as you can see, has a long-term support. It's got 18 months of support. It will expire in April 2012, and that's really the physical marker to say, look, this is really time to change. It doesn't mean it actually ends life in terms of what a company does. And our consultants and web shops can still deploy on 1.5. The download will still be available, but there will be no more security updates. Even if there's a 0 day, the project won't be looking at it, but I'm sure somebody in the community could. But what we've got in between those is our short-term release cycles. Our 1.6. 1.6 is dead now, it's gone. There is no 1.6, it's now 1.7 as of August. We ended support on that. So there's this sort of notion that every 6 months there's new features, and those versions basically retire the previous one, except for, but every third one we have the long-term support. Now, we had another discussion about these numbers and things, and this is sort of where the 0.5 comes from. And we thought, okay, well, how about we do this in release sets? So instead of sort of starting with the long-term support, we finished with the long-term support. So let's imagine 3.0 is the next one to next version to come out. Incrementing the first number means there's potentially breaking changes. Look, it's a major change. There might be UI changes. There might be backward compatibility changes, and that's fine. So this is the first release of the new whiz-bang version. And 6 months after that, we actually released the bug-free version, which is 3.1, which might include a few more features. But after that, this is our third release in the cycle. We'll have 3.5. Now, we thought about 3.2, but we'll just work with the 0.5 at the moment. And that'll have 18 months of support. But in total, that forms, the triplet forms a set that the 3.x version of Joomla has almost 2.5 years of support. So anybody writing a book, for example, or documentation for Joomla 3.0, quite easy to do the second edition, which updates to 3.1, quite easy to do the third edition, which upgrades to 3.5. But the shelf life of both documentations and extensions is extended because we're doing all our major changes in the 0.0, and we're polishing until we get to the 3.5. Now, why the 0.5? Well, we arbitrarily said that the 0.5 is a good indicator for the long-term support. We might sneak a 3.2 in there or something like that, just to give us a bit of leeway. But the 0.5s are the ones to say these are the long-term supports. That's the only reason why we're not going sequentially. We wanted to avoid the situation where we go 3.1, 3.2. Okay, 3.2 is the long-term support. 4.0, 4.1, 4.2. For some reason, there's a 4.3 and a 4.4, and 4.4 is a long-term support. The leadership thought it would be better to have this, constant marker. So you can see when you have these release sets, there's a lot longer period that these individual versions have a shelf life, and the extensions can progressively move from 3.0 to 3.1 to 3.5 without too much hassle. 4.0 comes along, breaks a few things, the extensions need to change, but overall, something that was designed for 3.0 should work on 3.5, so you've got that sort of 2.5 years support. And that's where the 2.5 came from. We had a community vote that says, should the next version be 1.8, or should it, which is sequential, or should it be 2.5 to marry with this new strategy of the 0.5s are the long-term supports. The vote was 49.9999% on the 1.8 and 50.01 on the 2.5, so we went 2.5. Mm-hmm. It was literally just split down the middle, so that's there's nothing particularly magical about why that is.
Is that because only 7 people voted? Or?
I think actually about 200. It's still, still chicken feed in the grand scheme of things. But it caused a lot of discussion. Put it that way. Oh, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? No, the question was A or B. We don't want to see. So anyway, some of the other things that we took the slides from back before 1.6 came out. And this refers to the development life cycle itself. We've gone to a stable trunk mentality. During the bad old 1.5 days, we used to do all of the new work in what we'd call our master copy, and the master copy could be broken or could be stable at any point in time. We didn't know. That wasn't terribly good, a good way of doing it, and so now only what we call the trunk or the master copy gets stuff that has at least gone through some sort of peer review, has been tested, and that sort of thing. It's logical now, but in hindsight, perfect vision. We've also discontinued the notion of having bug trackers for each individual version. We just have issues that are tracked and features that can be tracked. And the notion is, because we're having this rolling release cycle every 6 months, there's no point in keeping bugs for the older version. They're either a bug that is relevant now and needs to be fixed, or it needs to be retired. For example, the 1.5 issue tracker has something like 8 or 9 pages of unresolved bugs, and those are, to be honest, are never going to get looked at, but some of them might actually have been relevant for 1.7. So, it's another minor change. And there's the idea of the feature tracker where people can put patches on there or new features, and there's a place to collaborate. That's a... Gee, I got through that a lot quicker than I have before. That's a good place to sort of stop and take any questions about that side of thing.
So you got the issue tracker and the feature tracker. What happens as a developer if I come across a bug? How do I go about reporting that now?
A bug just goes on the issue tracker.
So it is on the issue tracker.
What we had is some problems in 1.5 land. We called it a bug tracker. So if something wasn't technically a bug, it got thrown out. It got marked as not a bug. But it probably should have been fixed. So it was just this... there's some sort of pedantic people in the community, and they say, this isn't a bug, we don't have to fix it. Anyway, just changing to the issue sort of softened and it also gave us some flexibility to sort of sneak in minor stuff and not break our development policy. Because our policy was that, back in 1.5, no new features, absolutely, nope, we're not doing it, because the one thing that we did do took an innumerable number of Joomla sites down. I don't know if you remember which one it was, 1.5.9 or something, or 1.4 was pretty bad as well. But anyway, it just gave us a little bit of flexibility, because if there was something that wasn't quite a feature but it was worthwhile, we could sort of sneak it in if we called it an issue. But when everything was a bug, it was sort of very now, having said that, we'll be moving to a different sort of repo. Well, the Joomla platform, which I'm about to go into, is already on a thing called GitHub, and the CMS will be moving there soon, and that will actually help foster development as well, because new features can make stuff easier for developers to contribute. So, what's this about? Okay, so Joomla operates, I said this in my talk earlier, in Joomla 1.0 we sort of had 2 or 3 mega files that would be included in every script run, and it was sort of like having this those big RVs that it's sort of like driving one of those around to go down to the corner store. It's just in case you needed to stay overnight to get the bottle of milk. We're taking this. It's been with you, Matt.
Winnebago, you think?
Yeah, Winnebago. That's right. So Joomla 1.0 was this Winnebago of features that travelled with you on every page load. We thought we need to do this a little bit smarter, and in 1.5 things were redesigned as a framework. So lovely object-oriented stuff. Looks terrible in hindsight, but that's the way it goes. Some of the places. And we went to the idea of sort of lazy loading. We'd only load the sort of the files that we particularly needed to use at the time, going from a just-in-time mentality rather than just in case we're going to load the whole framework, just in case you're going to use that one and that class and any number of classes. And that was okay, but because of 1.6 was taking 3 years to develop, it meant that no new features were going into the framework. So people started sort of extending the framework on their own, and I was involved in a company called J Extended, and we produced an extended framework which sort of just got us around some of the hurdles for extension developments. A lot of people have heard of Nuku. They, sort of trying to work around things. People also use Zend because it was, interesting at the time and suited their purposes. People might have heard, anybody who uses Rocket Theme knows that Gantry's around because they just sort of weren't happy with the way the template features were going. So Gantry is to the template developers what an extended PHP framework is to us, to we component developers. And Gantry actually saw an opportunity where other people could use it in WordPress, and Zen is obviously, can be used in lots of other places. We ended up getting 1.6 out, and we decided, okay, it's time to make a break, and we want to rip that framework out, and we literally just put it back. But the deal is we separated it. It's now a separate project. So the CMS, Joomla the CMS that you install, is technically a separate project from the engine that runs it. And the reason why we've done that is that we can be more agile with the features that we bring into the Joomla platform, the engine room. So, if we want to add a carburetor or a new carby or twin turbochargers or whatever, we have more freedom to do so because we're not waiting 3 years for these features to actually surface to surface and let developers use them. There's nothing that kills a developer more quickly than to putting in a patch and waiting 3 years for it to actually become distributable. It just doesn't work. Now, in pulling out the Joomla platform as well, there's also the idea of, well, we only really need one of these on any one server. And so we're also thinking, okay, well, maybe it can be installable by like pair or apt-get in the Linux world, or whatever. And that would allow for a Joomla CMS version to be a platformless version, which doesn't include that extra one meg payload every time. So, if you're on a shared host and you've got, 400 Joomla sites on there, you've got 400 copies of the framework at the moment. But if you've got one copy of the platform and all of the Joomla sites point to that, it makes it more efficient because you can update the platform once and all of the sites are updated in turn. It does make it a little bit tricky on the dependency side, because if one version of a component wants one version of the platform and another wants another version, it's a little bit sticky. But it's a trade-off either way. But the other thing with the Joomla, with the platform itself, is the CMS is not its only customer now. It can be used to develop web services, web service layer. You can build the next Gmail. You can build the next Twitter.com by using the Joomla platform. You can build server tools which are not forward-facing. They're completely behind the lines, and they're doing cron jobs for you and that sort of thing. And you can build other standalone apps. Sockets, things with sockets that work with chat rooms and stuff like that. And that's the whole point of breaking out of the platform. Lots of advantages. We get more innovation in a timely fashion. We get new features that aren't necessarily tied to the CMS, because another problem that we have, what developers have with getting features into the CMS is some people maintaining the CMS would say, well, we don't need that for the CMS. Why do we? Why is it going in? Or we might want to use it for other reasons other than the CMS. But we're a CMS, and, so you get away from that idea of things that aren't needed in the CMS. We can actually add those things in. Okay, so the platform's a little bit different. We're looking at 3 to 4 releases per year, roughly every sort of 3 or 4 months. It just depends on workloads and that sort of thing, but it's pretty arbitrary. The versions are a little bit different. They're in 11.1, 12.1 format. The first 2 numbers are just the last 2 numbers in the year. Point 1 is just the first release. Point 2 is the second release. Point 3 is the third release. There's no ideas. There's no concept of long or short-term support in the platform, because we're dealing with basically the platform is built by developers for developers. It's not an end-user system. But we do have very high requirements for backward compatibility at any point in time. And we would generally only break backward compatibility, or more likely is drop old features every 12 months. So we haven't released 11.3 yet. Hopefully that gets released this month sometime. And 12.1 will be released, where we chuck out a lot of the craft that we sort of had to hang on to for a while. As I've already said, it's a change in dependency direction. Instead of the platform relying on the CMS now relies on the platform, which means we can include a lot more features. I moved to a dbcs, a distributed version control system, on GitHub, much more friendly for collecting contribution. At the moment, it's really, the problem is now that we don't have enough people to process all of the requests, which is a nice problem to have. What we used to have is we didn't have enough requests to process, so or new features, which is great. So for the GitHubbers, we're on github.com/Joomla-platform. There's also Joomla-platform-examples. And anybody who's contributing needs to complete a Joomla contributor agreement. There's nothing onerous. It basically says you own what you've got, but you also allow Open Source Matters, the legal entity, to do whatever they want with that contribution, providing they do it under one of the GPL family, one of the GPL licenses, GPL or LGPL. We did have, for those who are familiar with it, the AGPL, the Affero, but we're taking that out because it's a little bit too controversial and is blocking some people contributing. Okay, we still got some challenges. As I said, lowering barriers we've lowered the barriers of contribution, but that increases the management needs. It's a good problem to have, but when you're volunteer driven and you don't have any one particular massive company sort of overseeing a project, it really is dependent. How these features come in is really dependent on who's available in one time. So we have 5 or 6 platform maintainers, which are the gatekeepers for the code coming in. So if all of us are busy at one point in time, it can take a while. Another challenge or opportunity is I'd love to see more. There's certainly a lot of contribution, but I don't think we have as much collaboration as we do in other projects like our Drupal friends. I'd love to see more people working on less extensions. We don't really need 17 different CCK extensions. I mean, seriously. Can't we start working together, or at least pulling the guts out of those extensions, so that people are just doing the secret sauce that they want. I think there's a happy medium between Joomla's sort of capitalist attitude of choice and Drupal's attitude of there shall only be one of anything. Is that right, or close?
Yeah, I mean, the bigger things like, content kit and stuff like that, you're looking at one, but we still do have the problem of, I think, like, because it's, it's open source, so if somebody designs a view, an image slideshow, then 30 other people can design develop their own. So it's still a bit like
so there's a happy medium somewhere like that. Always a lot of discussion on Joomla's going to fork, Joomla's going to fork. Well, now that's not a rude word anymore, and like bow ties, if you're a Doctor Who fan, they are actually cool. Any Doctor Who fans? Hey! What do you think? Look at this. Think of the last season? Seriously.
I watched this Randy Bond, that was it. The story doesn't matter.
Can't you just
there is that.
Can't you just leave Doctor Who back in the 70s? Dude, fair dinkum, move on.
Shall we kick him out?
Anyway.
You're not getting left in the dark.
Heretic.
Cringy pants. Are you more a fringe guy? No, okay. Anyway.
Lives in a forest.
Vampires?
I'm in the Stargate universe at the moment, and it is just the duck's nuts. I'm really sad they cancelled it. Anyway, how extensions handle the difference between long and short-term support is, I don't know. I just don't know how you deal with it. I know the problem is going to smack us square between the eyes in a few months with the changeover of 2.5 is the next long-term release in January. 1.5 retires, and there's sort of a lot of people thinking the sky's going to fall. I don't have a simple answer for that. I think the release sets, since I made these slides, the release sets will do a lot to alleviate some of the things, but until we get into the 3.0 series, we're going to sort of be in this no man's land where we've still got a lot of market share on 1.5, and we still don't have everyone all the extension developers on board for 1.7/2.5. And the other challenge we've got is because we're completely volunteer run, and if you're a developer in the house, you are the development community. It's very hard to set specific roadmaps of where we're going, either for the CMS or the platform. And I don't know how you solve that when you really don't know who's going to come in, who's clocking in for work in any one day. You can give so much guidance, but you can set a roadmap and then nobody turns up to actually execute it. You can not set it, you can just set a broad vision, and then people don't know. It's not specific enough for people to know how to do it. So it's one of those tensions that we just...
Andrew, can I ask a little question on that extension?
Okay, we're not quite finished, but that was the end of that slide. Yes, you can ask a question now, because we're there.
As a website builder, dealing with upgrades is my own thing, but as an extension developer that I'm not, I can't imagine how difficult it must have been. One of the big advantages I see is that hopefully it got rid of a lot of the chaff because it was too difficult. If they didn't have a monetarized solution for their component, then they probably thought it was too difficult and they probably went by the wayside. However, if we're about to go through another change again, I know that a number of larger component manufacturers, not least of which K2, took a long time to come around. I mean, is the project setting these people up for potentially more pain and or more hurt?
Look, there's always a potential for it. What happened with 1.6, hopefully that happen again. I touch wood and cross fingers and toes. But we knew that there was a pain point coming and we needed to apply it sometime. So we applied it at 1.6 and said, look, we know things are going to break, but and particularly the ACL was going to break stuff anyway. So we thought, okay, well, we might as well really make a hash of it. And that's why we have another migration. We didn't expect that, but that's all how it turned out. However, I think we've demonstrated with 1.7, the upgrade is much smoother, not perfect, but smoother. The upgrade to 2.5 will be exactly the same. They've been very light, gentle releases. I think people were worried that we take, the amount of work that we did in 1.5, we were going to translate that into a 6-month period. We're good, but we're not that good. And I think that the general release is slowly going to build people's confidence that a Joomla upgrade isn't as bad anymore, and hopefully in the future the long-term support just goes away because the upgrades are so smooth. It doesn't matter. Of course, you've still got people on 6 like me, but on one particular site. But that happens.
Thankfully, I never went 1.6.
It's awesome. It's awesome. But it's not for everyone.
Because my fear with all that is I would hate to see with due respect to our Drupal friends, I'd hate to see that day where we have one choice. I mean, that's the power of Joomla. The power of Joomla is there are people, component manufacturers, making serious dollars out there, which is awesome because it means that I can get the best components on the market. My fear is that those component manufacturers will get the shits with us and move elsewhere to WordPress and wherever else.
Yeah. There are a couple of sides to that argument. Are those component manufacturers actually engaging the process, or are they aloof? Are they, to be quite honest, most of the Joomla businesses are too flaming busy to be watching things. I know there was a particular, I can't remember the exact feature it was. I know who I was talking to. I won't mention the name, but I was saying to this guy, look, I started talking about this 6 months ago, and I'm blasting here, there, and there, everywhere, and the answer was, oh look, I don't have time to read it. And they suddenly wake up at it's GA. It's just about to come out, and they've suddenly woken up the feature there. Now I can't help those people when they come in so late to the come in so late in the process, but they also make a lot of noise at the time, which makes everything look bad.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think the release cycle changes have when things are changing in small ways more frequently, it does look. I think it does help people keep up, because 1.7 went over pretty much without a bang. There were a couple of little things, and again it was, hey guys, we told you to change this, and you could have done this over 1.6. But I think everybody that had that problem, they had a new version out sort of the next few days, because it was very gentle. It wasn't this monumental deconstructing. And I hear what you're saying, and I feel the pain that actually I'm to blame for a lot of the pain that I put the developers through. But it was something that had to happen for us to get to that one-click install, for us to get to the platform, for us to get to a few different places. And I think after a few release cycles, people will actually calm down, and I think everybody who's on, all the developers that are on board for 1.7 will be completely, fully prepared for 2.5 without a doubt. And we're still waiting for a few people to actually come on to the post 1.5 train. But the ones that you don't see moving are the monolithic. These are the things that have been patched just to make them run on 1.5. They haven't adopted the newer stuff, or except for things like Git Calendar, which didn't use any of the Joomla framework, so things like that will still run. But they're going to become more and more difficult to run as they sort of clash with the new code versus the old. Does everyone know how to migrate from 1.5 to 1.7 at the moment?
I do. You send the client a quote for a rebuild.
And if it's got to be accessible, it's another zero, no?
That's it. That's the name of the new company, John.
Yeah, another zero.
Adding zeros.
Excuse me while I go in. Okay, so there is a tool to use. It's not managed directly by the project. So the thing you need to look up is J upgrade.
That Sam's? That one? No.
No. J upgrade, J update. That is Sam's. upgrade. Yeah. Okay, so it's a sky with this little icon here. There's an extension you install on Joomla 1.5. Unfortunately, the red component guys have taken over distribution rights of that. I don't know what happened there and requires registration. It really does not impress me, but that's...
Is he the guy that used to do MTW migrator?
I'm not sure.
Yep, that's the one.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was a
Same,
one
it's
too.
the same dog, different spots.
Anyway, I've downloaded that. I haven't aversion to people requiring registration for free components. But, no. To each their own.
Just so they can give you the upgrade.
Anyway. So I've got a Joomla 1.5.24 here. Just install sample data.
No third parties, obviously.
No third parties. Now, third party is still a bit of a problem, and you've really got to look at each third party extension on their own. I think Upgrade has a few migrators, but one thing you do have to enable is in the plugin manager. There's a new tools. Plugin, you need to enable that. It will tell you to upgrade that. It will tell you to enable that anyway, so just something to watch. Okay, so we've got some parameters. We want 1.7, so you can upgrade to 1.6 or 1.7. I wish you'd take out large because it doesn't exist. You can put, it's going to install in the JUpgrade directory.
Oh, nice.
So the prefix for your current prefix is JAWS. It will install the data in the same database, so but you can specify the prefix. There's a few checks and balances here. You can, if you've already downloaded it, you can skip the download and that sort of thing. Some help text would be really appropriate for a demo, but doesn't have it. Okay, anyway, so we're just going to leave all the files. So really,
Start your time.
Now, what it does is, if you've got a mostly Joomla content-rich site, it will do a pretty damn good job of bringing it over.
What about the template?
The template is a problem, but that's not.
I'm glad you say that.
Not
Do me have a bloody job. True.
No, there's well, there's a big the template's a problem because it's not so much the template. It's that the core output has changed. So you are going to need to adjust your template somehow. If you bought a Rocket theme or a U theme or something which has layout overrides for every thing that's available, you are probably going to be okay because they have taken full control over your site anyway. But for a stock, good old-fashioned, hand-coded, handcrafted, whittled down to the bone template, you're going to need to upgrade it.
Done.
And we're done. So let's see what it caters. So this is a stock 1.5 site being converted to a 1.7 site.
Oh, that's really quick.
So a lot quicker than doing it by hand. Obviously some...
And you begrudge him from asking for a registration for that? He should be making a fortune. Poor bugger.
Oh, look, I've got to have something to complain about. Look, he should be asking for $10 at least.
Yeah.
10 euros or whatever. I would, so that's that, and the administrator you should be familiar with. Okay, so some caveats. The template is now your two biggest problems. The template, sort of working with different output because we've gone to nice semantic H1s and H2s, which Sarah would be very happy about us having sort of screen readers can see it. Some of the old 1.5 output just isn't going to work. Your style sheet, your template style sheet is just going to be up the creek. Really, if your template works in 1.6, you're extremely lucky. Put it that way. And the other problem is extensions. And to be honest, I haven't been there with extensions only to know enough that sometimes the data comes across, sometimes it doesn't.
But it is trying to check that the J upgrade is actually trying to check.
It's got hooks for plugin for extension developers to put in their things.
Right.
I don't think they've got much traction with that. Great idea in principle, but because our major component developers are looking at it. They're looking at, I've got a 1.5 version, I've got a 1.7 compatible version, but they aren't looking at that for what happens with my people that need migration. Or they're putting in an exporter and an importer.
Okay, so it's still that same old process of, like, you're upgrading the core, but then you still really got to kind of go through each one of the extensions and see where they're at and download them.
Yeah, it does. It is a pain, and then you get to the stage where you've got, okay, I get the 1.7 version, and this one's on the Zen framework, and this one's on the Nuka framework, and this one's on Gantry, and you end up with 6 different frameworks. But anyway, that's, as a webmaster, as a site master, doing that sort of thing, it frustrates the life out of me. Fortunately, I don't have to do that much of that anymore.
Well, in fairness, that's pretty much only going to work for plain Jane installs. However, what that will do as well is bring across module positions.
Yes, it'll
bring across menus, content. So it's probably worth doing it, and then just dealing with the rest of it.
Oh, absolutely. Look, you've got to do this because it's going to say it's going to bring the menus over, the modules. It's going to port all the core plugins and stuff across. It's going to whittle out some stuff that isn't there anymore, and it's going to save you a ton of work to do it this way. Unless it's a 12-page Joomla site, in which case it's just easier to rehash it. But look, you saw how quickly that took, and you know how much sample data is in the 1.5 site. There isn't that much sample data. To reproduce that by hand, you don't need a big site for this to pay off as the first cut.
Andrew, we did an exercise, Patrick and myself, and we took a 1.0 site using the MJ upgrader and took it straight through to 1.5, 1.7, 17 minutes to get all the content, all the images across. As I said, all the other bits and pieces.
It'll be a little bit more rugged because the migration from 1.0 was a bit rough in places. But still, I mean, that's 17 minutes compared to,
3 days.
Yeah, quite a few days.
But no, it did a marvellous job as far as getting all the content and everything across.
So just to be clear, 1.5 is a migration point. There is it's an immovable object. You have to migrate to something. You'll be able to migrate. You can migrate to 1.7 now. When 2.5 comes out, I'm sure Matthias will write the 2.5. It's really not much of a difference. Once you're on the 1.6, 1.7 train, you're into one-click upgrade. I think it's actually 4 clicks, but we call it one-click upgrade. You're into automatic upgrades, and you don't have that migration thing happening again. At least not until 4.0, and even then, I don't think 3.0 will be that dramatic because we physically can't do that much in 6 months. So I don't know. I'm not aware of what's in 2.5. There's some guys desperately trying to work on Finder. I don't know if you've heard of Finder. It's
only the best search app in the place.
Absolutely.
And it's a travesty that JX isn't continuing. Because
it is. So a couple of guys have picked that up and they want to put that natively in 2.5. So Finder is a search indexing. Look at stemming. Look at did you mean? I can't find this word. Did you mean this? that sort of thing. So
Highlighting, word highlighting.
yeah, word highlighting. So I know they're pretty. If that's the only thing that goes in 2.5, it will be worth the pain of going through
Virtually putting Google in it. It's virtually putting
Yeah,
Google
you
in
have, and a lot of people say, well, why don't you just rely on Google search? Well, you can't. Google search is good, but you can't tune it for your content. It's a dumb robot, and it'll try and guess, but you know your content better than Google does.
You can also put the filters over it. I'm telling somebody to build it, but,
so that will be really cool.
And labels as well, JX labels?
No, we haven't touched that. But no, that's unified content.
JX filler would be a good one to put in 2.4.
Filler, yeah. I should upgrade that one. So I've got 4 more minutes.
So the dependencies between Joomla platform and the CMS, you're basically saying you're trying to be as much backwards compatible. So is the platform automatically upgraded when you do an upgrade, or is that separate?
Yeah, so the platform it's in its own world per se, so it's on its own release cycle.
Yeah.
And the CMS will come along and say, no, we're not quite ready to upgrade, we're not quite ready. Okay, we can pull this version now because everything works. And that they will drop a version of the platform in at some point in time. That could be at 3.0, that could be at 1.7.2. It's really, the platform becomes another library that they can upgrade. It's not core code anymore, so we can get around that no new features rule, and it's really cool in that way, because all of a sudden, let's say 11.3 of the platform goes in 1.7.2 of Joomla CMS. Suddenly, extension developers have JImage, which is a new class which does image manipulation that everybody has sort of had to reinvent themselves. So it's really good in that respect. But to be honest, the Joomla CMS is our biggest downstream stakeholder. We're not going to do anything to ping the CMS off. Yes.
So as somebody who's upgrading a website, I don't actually have to think about that. I just install
Comes with Joomla.
new version of Joomla, it drags along whatever it wants.
Yeah, the new version of the platforms comes in, and then one extension breaks because it does something silly.
But if I've got a setup that's got other stuff that's dependent on Joomla platform, then I have to sort of know what's going on down below.
Yeah, so if you
something else might break.
Yeah, so today, if you're monitoring the platform and you say, oh right, this is a feature I want in, I'm going to drop the Joomla platform into Joomla today. That could have interesting results because we're still resolving some bugs between the platform and the CMS, and that's mainly due to something gets fixed in the CMS, but it hasn't been fixed. It's just a communication problem. But assuming that has happened, yes, you can upgrade the platform independently. If you're an extension developer and relying on a later version of the platform than what Joomla provides, that's dangerous territory.
Okay, so your advice basically is, if I'm dependent on the platform to a very great extent, don't try and run sort of 2 things in one thing. Use virtual machines and have one version of the platform and one.
Oh, absolutely. For individual projects, you could, because the CMS comes with a full version of the platform, you can have a different version of the platform on each CMS site until such time as we have a switch to say we'll use the core thing. Okay.
Beauty.
That's time.